Good morning to all of you. It is, I'm so pleased to be with you for so many reasons. Thank you for your hospitality. As Andy said, I was with your board yesterday, and I can report that the hospitality and the food was great. Being raised a Methodist, I thought we cornered the market on potlucks and meals, but now that I've been a Unitarian Universalist for these many years, I think we may do better. We certainly have more kale and quinoa than the Methodists, both of which I like, actually. There's much to be grateful for. Your theme of gratitude for the month. It's a pleasure to be a part of that, and I'm grateful for the gift of music from our great musicians. I didn't see the music selections until Friday, and I couldn't be more pleased. I'm not a musician, but it's what I would have selected in my bold ignorance of music. So I'm really delighted to be here. So about this sermon title, being bold, brave, and bodacious. Frankly, I liked the alliteration. I've used the taglines on my emails for some time now, sometimes saying live boldly, sometimes saying live bravely. And as we know, a series of 3, Trinitarian, if you please, captures people's attention. So I added bodacious. It's a word that's not in my lexicon, or wasn't, but one I remembered my mother using. I looked up the word to confirm my understanding of the usage of the word, and the most common definitions were very good, impressive, noteworthy, remarkable, voluptuous. I don't know where that comes from. Interesting to me, it seems to have more common usage in the South than the last century, having emerged from a combination of bold and audacious. So I'm liking living into this reclaimed word, bodacious. I want Unitarian Universalism and more Unitarian Universalists to be bold and audacious, bodacious. These are characteristics, frankly, I didn't see when I was looking for a liberal religious community. So I want to explore how we might live into that notion of boldness and audacity with you this morning. So I want to do 2 things. I want to reintroduce myself to give you a sense of what calls me to this work as moderator, and talk about governance as a spiritual practice. Now stay with me. All will be revealed. All will be revealed. I know this is a multi-generational service, but this will be instructional for all of us. Yes, governance as a spiritual practice that will lead us to bend the moral arc of the universe towards more justice, I believe, more peace, and more love. To be bolder, braver, and maybe just a bit bodacious. My personal journey and governance, the 2 are linked. As I travel around the country, I find that many people don't understand the role of the moderator in our liberal religious movement. So let me explain a little bit. As your moderator, I'm privileged to serve the association of over 1,000 congregations, and I have 3 roles in one. There you go again. First, the more visible role of the moderator is presiding over our annual General Assembly each June, and I facilitate the governance or the business component of our yearly 4-day gatherings that attract about 4,000, 5,000 UUs. How many of you have recently been to a General Assembly in the last 2 or 3 or 4 years? Oh, an active congregation. I love that. The second role of the moderator, it's perhaps less visible, that you heard Andy talk about, is chair of the Board of Trustees, which meets quarterly each year in person and many times during the year by video conference. Many times during the year by video conference. And in my third role as Chief Governance Officer for the association, steering the board and senior staff into generative discussions about the future of our religious movement, our vision, or what we call our global ends. This is the important piece of the work that calls me. So let me digress here and better define governance, first of all, and later generative thinking. When practiced intentionally, governance is the enabler of our dreams. Governance is the practical and pragmatic process of operationalizing the aspirations of our covenantal faith. That's delivering on our promises, this covenant we entered in together. So let's look at those promises. Do you have a gray hymnal in front of you? I know we rely on the screens, but do you have a gray hymnal you can work with me here. Go to hymn 1. I'm going to read it to you, and we're going to read it together, those of you that have it in front of you. Go to hymn 1, and then turn the page back to that unnumbered page entitled, "We, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, Covenant, Promise." We promise to affirm and promote. And then it goes on to list the 7 principles, which we all like to quote, and then the many sources from which we draw. Now read with me the last paragraph. You ready? "Grateful for the religious pluralism which enriches and ennobles our faith, we are inspired to deepen our understanding and expand our vision. As free congregations, we enter into this covenant, promising to one another our mutual trust and support." By your joining this congregation, you signed up for those promises to affirm and promote our principles, understand our theology on inclusion, deepen our understanding, and think big, bold, bodacious thoughts, perhaps. Because of your connection to the broader movement, and let me pause for a moment here and thank you for your faithful contributions to the annual program fund to the Unitarian Universalist Association. You're a fair share congregation, and I want to note that and thank you for that. Coming from a small congregation that received a $25,000 first home grant from the association, your gift to my congregation, I very much appreciate that, and I have deep gratitude for your engagement with the broader movement of our faith. So my role as Chief Governance Officer is to ensure our oversight structures, the board, the policies, the committees, enable to the best of our ability to reach that vision and those promises that we've all made to each other. As you heard, the moderator is a volunteer position, traditionally a layperson that serves a single 6-year term. So I'm in my 3rd year, and the term expires June 2019. So I want to share my own story of finding Unitarian Universalism. It informs the work I do to steer our association towards that radically welcoming and inclusive, beloved community that we long for. And frankly, I didn't find, although looking for over 30 years. I grew up in a working, poor household in the Jim Crow South in the southwest mountains of Virginia, the 6th child of a single mother. Not the profile that we normally seek out. My radical grandfather, a social gospel Methodist, influenced my early life. My mother would decamp to his home in North Carolina when we would hit difficult economic times. Under his tutelage, I was encouraged to speak out against the evils of segregation and the errors of theology he observed in most white Christian denominations of his time and his place. It's a very powerful message to an 11-year-old. I married Liz, a friend I met in middle school. We did not marry in middle school, I should add. Despite your thoughts about Southern marriages. And we raised 2 sons and a daughter, and we now have 6 grandchildren. We enjoyed and still enjoy a privileged life. We are people of privilege. She's a registered nurse in OBGYN, and having worked over the years with indigent and at-risk young women, and I a career with IBM for over 30 years. We lived and worked all over the United States and Asia, always seeking, always joining the most liberal and progressive congregation we could find. My humanist views were evolving, and I found myself challenging the relevance of organized religion as I was experiencing it in an increasingly unjust world. As our family moved about and sought progressive religious communities, we never encountered a Unitarian Universalist in any of the places we lived. Virginia, New Jersey, northern New Jersey, outside of New York City, Oklahoma, Tulsa, site of one of our largest UU congregations, Missouri and Missouri, in Kansas City, St. Louis, Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia, Tokyo, and Connecticut, Westport, Connecticut, that delivered the congregation that delivered the moderator before the previous to mine. I'm pretty sure Unitarian Universalists were around, but no one was ever out. No one seemed to be bold and brave about what they believed or stood for, much less bodacious. We never met anyone who identified as a UU in all of those decades. Not one. And it wasn't as if we were sitting home. We were active in the National Organization for Women, Planned Parenthood, Urban League, NAACP, went to progressive political gatherings. No one ever invited us to join them. Went to temples, churches, all sorts of people invited us in, but no Unitarian Universalists. So Liz and I returned to the South with some trepidation, moving to Beaufort, South Carolina in 1997. It was there that a Presbyterian minister finally introduced us to Unitarian Universalism. She said, "You need to be over there with those people." Those people were a small group of UUs displaced from their natural habitat in the Northeast who were organizing a Unitarian Universalist congregation. So in 1999, the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Beaufort, thanks to your gifts, became an affiliated congregation of our association. Liz and I had found our liberal religious home after searching for over 3 decades. Now, after the service, every time I've delivered that line, people join me in the back of the congregation to the church and say, "You know, I have a similar story. You were hard to find." As brand new UUs, we were founding members of an emerging congregation, which I served as president for 5 years. So governance, you see, is in my DNA. But here's the point. It shouldn't take a Presbyterian minister to be the prophetic voice for Unitarian Universalism. Our responsibility as religious liberals, as prophetic voices in our communities, who are all about changing the world to a place of more justice, more peace, and more love, is to tell the good news of this faith that we share. We must be bold. We must be brave. And yes, sometimes we have to be a little bit bodacious. Being bold means being seen and heard, standing in solidarity with any and all oppressed peoples, and you do a very good job of it here. Often in our yellow standing on the side of love paraphernalia, and not just on parade days. Wearing your pins, whatever you like to wear, to evoke, I always get a comment. Flight attendants and baristas around the country are very curious about this logo. It opens up a conversation. So being bold and bodacious means adapting to the changing times and becoming adept and agile in using social media. You are the first congregation, and I think I've been to about 40, that I've noted in the program that says, "Please silence your electronic devices, but feel free to Facebook or tweet about the service." I love that. So let me just stop for a moment. I promise not to use your name. I hate it when they want a code. I just don't like that, but work with me here. Here we go. So we okay being broadcast to the world? I don't know which photo we'll use. Very good. Love it. Seriously, I have already tweeted twice during the service. Have you all? Anybody else tweeted? No? Now's the time to get started. So it does mean adapting to the changing times. It means trying new things and being willing to fail, frankly, to forgive ourselves and then try again. It means taking risks to becoming the radically welcoming, beloved community. A PS to this story. That Presbyterian minister that pointed Liz and me to that emerging UU congregation is now a fully fellowshipped UU minister serving a congregation in Oregon. Don't you love it? That experience, though, as a congregational leader in a religious community that aspired to be radically welcoming, led me to attend and then serve on the faculty of a leadership school in the Southeast. That service was followed by several terms on the district board as vice president and later as president for 4 years. All of these experiences confirm my belief that the world would be a better place if we could become that bold, prophetic voice in the public square. By being bold and audacious in our outreach, we will attract more and more people to the vision of beloved community that King called us to. The changing demographics of millennials and the spiritual but not religious, the nuns, the no other religion noted, are all play to our strengths of inclusion. This is our time, I think. Those leadership experiences also demonstrated to me the power of generative thinking when undertaken by a governance structure, whether at whatever level, the congregational, the district, or the association levels, a governance structure that experiences governance as a spiritual practice that needs to be practiced and needs to be intentional. So let me explain what I mean by generative thinking. It occurs before strategy and before the execution of any long-range planning. Generative leaders ask, what problem are we solving? Whom should we be serving? How can we be that prophetic voice in the public square? Where are the partners we can stand with in solidarity? Generative leaders ask the big questions to gain insight into organizational identity, purpose, and direction. And generative thinkers are not just those on the board. They serve on committees and task forces and working groups. They really wrestle to the ground these hard questions. Let me quote from our association's ends, our vision statement, if you will. I'm quoting now, a healthy Unitarian Universalist community that is alive with transforming power, moving our communities and the world toward more love, justice, and peace. Those are not just lovely aspirational words. They are our shared vision, board and staff and congregations. Many people participated in crafting those, as you can imagine when any group of Unitarian Universalists get together to craft words. But they are a shared vision as we fund and assess programs, grow ministries, encourage entrepreneurial communities, and lift our prophetic voice in the public square. The Black Lives Matter movement is a good example of that, and you've demonstrated to this community your own boldness and bravery to do that, and I commend you for that stand and that position. So the generative discussions and how can we move more and more of our Unitarian Universalism congregations to ones that are alive with transforming power and moving more love, justice, and peace. That's what our generative discussions ought to call us to do and ask. So my call this morning is this. Think of governance not simply as a geeky look at bylaws, Robert's rules, and maintaining minutes. How many people are called to do that work? Anyway. Rather, think of governance as a spiritual practice that deeply assesses whether this is a community alive with transforming power and moving our community and the world toward more love, justice, and peace. And if not, what does that call on us to do to get to that point? Be bold in welcoming, radically welcoming the stranger, the other, the politically conservative, the business person, the transgender community. Act bravely as we engage in interfaith dialogue on issues of race and class, not only with those progressives of other faiths that we're comfortable with, but also with those with whom our theology might disagree. Consider being bodacious with those standing on the side of love, yellow shirts and hats and signs at local events and markets and fairs. Wear them often, and not just on MLK and Pride Parade days. I only ask that you be bold as we seek together to move our communities and the world towards more love, more justice, and more peace. May it be so.